Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy. Today I have a piece of, I'm not sure what, either maple or alder. There's no bark on it. Kind of looks like maple to me. So I'm just mounting it up on a woodworm screw, and I'm going to make some kind of a platter or a plate or whatever you might want to call it. I'm going to put on my mask and face shield. I'm going to sharpen up my 5/8 inch bowl gouge, and we're going to get to turning. Now this piece is about 12 inches by about 13 inches by about 2 inches thick. I could have rounded it up on the bandsaw. I didn't. I may want to keep square corners on here. They're irregular corners, but I may want to keep them squarish. I don't know. We're just going to play it by ear, kind of sneak up on it and see what happens. About 700 RPM. I think we'll go with a recess instead of a tenon on this one. And that ought to do. Well, I don't know. This might be a little grandiose for this piece. I'm pretty thin here, about a 1/4 inch. Maybe just about a 1/4 inch here. Over here I'm about 3/4 of an inch and about a 1/2 inch. I've got this irregular edge. I've got a chainsaw edge and a chainsaw edge and a fairly smooth edge. I don't know if it's worth trying to keep this like this with this for a base, or if I should just take those corners off. It's real hard to get a smooth cut out here, as you might imagine. It's got kind of an OG shape. You may not be able to tell that from where you are. Let's put in the recess. This is what it is, I guess. We'll let the sanding handle it. I still don't know if this is a good idea to leave it this shape or round it up. I really want to leave it. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it. Time for sanding. Dang, hate that part. Okay, I'm going to start off sanding in reverse. That's not going to be too bad. I've got it going a little bit faster than normal, about 350. I typically sand around 320, something like that. And that's so that it won't drop into the air in between. I'll probably have to do a little hand sanding like this, but I think it's going to clean up okay. So I'm starting with 80 grit. I'm going to work up through at least 400. And let's hope that crack doesn't get any worse. It's real shallow, but it's longer than I thought too. It does come right here to this point. Maybe I should hit that with some CA, huh? Anyway, I'll start with 80, go up through at least 400, and I'll bring you back when it's time to turn it around or put some kind of finish on here or whatever it is we decide at that time. So you be thinking about it. See you in a bit. Well, sanding this was kind of a chore because of the shape for one thing, because of this business here for another. I couldn't really power sand this area. It had to be hand sanded. I didn't want to ruin my recess. So lots of time involved here already. And that got me to thinking that we as wood turners, at least those that do this the way I do, and by that I mean start on the bottom or the outside of a bowl, whatever it is, sand it and finish it and then turn it around. We're working on faith here because we don't know what's going to happen once we get this turned around. Maybe the whole thing's going to blow apart. And by then you got hours of sanding time and turning time in it, and kind of hate to lose it. But that's just the breaks of the game. I did decide to leave this, I cannot say natural edge. I'm going to say existing edge, because that's a term one of my viewers pointed out to me. Sometimes you're turning an existing edge. And this is a chainsaw cut edge up here. And this edge here is mostly smooth, probably a bandsaw cut. This is chainsaw cut again. And this is a natural edge, this one. Anyway, I decided to leave it that way just because I like it. It's just kind of cool. And even this bandsaw cut edge, I don't know if it shows up on camera, but this is pretty straight until you get to about here, and then it sweeps up. And that's kind of cool. Now this crack here, I don't know if it has opened up or become more visible. This crack right here, since I sanded it. In any event, that's the reason I'm using shellac-based sanding sealer on here. I was going to go with Howard Feed and Wax because it's quick and easy, and because this grain isn't anything really outstanding. This part right here is kind of cool, but generally, overall, it's just kind of a plain piece. But because of that crack, I need to fill the crack with some thin CA. It's just a hairline crack, but it does go from here to the corner. And if I fill it now, it's going to stand out and look awful. So I need to get some finish on here and then fill it. And the finish won't let it bleed all over the place. And I'm not so sure if I use the Howard Feed and Wax if that would be the case or not. So it's going to be at least 2 coats of this shellac-based sanding sealer, which is Zinsser brand Seal Coat, it's called. It's pre-mixed, I don't mix it. And then, so at least 2 coats, probably just 2 coats, because this is a pretty smooth finish. And then probably 2 coats of shellac. And then it'll be time to turn it around and work on the other side. I'm probably going to take it off the lathe and fill this crack so that it's laying flat. I don't want it running all the way down here somewhere. So I will do that, and I will use my nylon abrasive pads in between coats to smooth it out. Fill that gap with CA, and I'll bring you back when it's time to start working on the other side. See you in a bit. Well, the bottom side is all finished. I put on 2 coats of shellac-based sanding sealer and 2 coats of shellac, and it's real smooth and nice. And now I've turned it around, put it in the recess, put the chuck in the recess. I still do have tailstock support for a while, and I'm going to work on just flattening this out. I've got a real thick side here, 5/8 of an inch thick or so, followed by about a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch here, about a 1/2 inch here. So I'm going to just flatten this out, actually working on this edge mostly, and then we'll start making a bowl shape in here. I'm going to be turning at 850 RPM, freshly sharpened 5/8 inch bowl gouge, mask and face shield on. Alright, let's start on the bowl part. Now, I don't want to go beyond about here. I don't know if I can see that. I think so. That's about as far as I want to go. Out this way. Have to go a lot deeper, of course. Well, I'm about 3/16 of an inch here, so I just got to go across the bottom a little bit. I'm about half an inch there, or less, because of that recess. It's flexing pretty bad out here. I'm a little bit hesitant to remove the tailstock because that recess that I made is at most 1/8 of an inch deep. It may not even be that deep, and I don't want this thing to go flying. That's probably not a surprise. I show this every once in a while, but not everyone watches all of my videos, so I apologize if you've already seen this. If you haven't seen it, it's a good tip. I could take my negative rake scraper over to the grinder and I could grind this edge, and that would put a nice burr up here. But why grind it away when all you really need is a round shank screwdriver? And find that bevel with that screwdriver, and then you want to just lift it up just a touch from this bevel. You want to find this edge right here. So find the bevel, then lift it up just a touch. And then just take your thumb, put it up on top here, find the bevel, lift it up a little bit, and apply some pressure right under this edge, the sharp edge, to put your burr on there. It might take 2 or 3 passes. Takes a little practice, but you don't have to press too hard. And that'll just raise a burr, which is all you need. There we go. That's all you need to scrape. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, I made a mistake here, and if you've seen some of my other videos, I preach one thing and now I'm doing another. Before you hollow out the center, you need to work your way down. This is pretty shallow, and I think that's what caught me off guard. I wasn't really thinking. This is only about 1 3/4 deep. But generally you want to, well, you still have some thickness here, which I don't have anymore. I have it here, but if I was out here with it, then you want to scrape if you're going to scrape, and I do need to scrape. But the reason for that is because this gets thin out here, and as it's spinning, in this case at 850 RPM, there's going to be some vibration, some wobble to it. It's going to oscillate here a little bit, and that makes it hard to get a smooth scraping action. But I've done it, and so I'm going to try and fix it, and I don't know if I can or not, but here we go. Okay, it's not perfect, but I'm satisfied with it. So now we'll go to work on the center. If you remember, I had the same trouble on my recess. I had some torn grain there, so it must just be a bad part of the wood. That's what I'm going to blame it on. So I think we're done. That's what we have. I think it's time for sanding. Yippee! No. I'm going to start sanding with the lathe in reverse. 2-inch sanding disc, 80 grit, and I'll work up through 400. This would be easy peasy if it wasn't for these 4 corners, but it's going to take a little bit of time, so I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on here, or sanding sealer. Well, that was an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back. It's a lot more work, like I said, sanding something square like this than something round. But I'm glad I left it square, a rectangle I should say. It's still it's about 11.5 by 13 is what it is. So this is the first of 2 coats of sanding sealer, and then 2 coats of shellac will follow, just like I did on the bottom. And I'll bring you back when, I don't know if we're going to remove the recess or leave it. It's very shallow and it doesn't look awful. I might just leave it. We'll see how it looks. Well, I think we're about done. This is just silky smooth. So let's get this off of here and see if we need to remove the recess. Oh, nice and light too. And I got a real good fit on my recess. So there are no jaw marks from the chuck. No jaw marks whatsoever. And I did finish all this quite well. So I think in this case I'm gonna leave it, and I think we're about done. False alarm. Imagine my surprise when I took this off and set it over there on the workbench and it rocked, and I had to ask myself, did this warp? Is that possible? I've had this wood a very long time, like more than 20 years. I'm sure it's dry. So how could it rock? Well, I seldom use a recess. I almost always use a tenon. And so I just wasn't paying attention. And as it turns out, this ring right here is higher than this ring right here. And so it rocks. So we're not done. I guess I will be removing the recess. So I've mounted up my woodworm screw, and I'm going to screw this block on here. This is just an ordinary piece of wood, 2x6 or something, I think is what it was. And I just turned it round, drilled a hole in the bottom, and threaded it on the woodworm screw. I also put CA on the threads so that I could use this over and over and over. It makes the threads hard. I'm going to use a soft touch, something I learned from Captain Eddie. It's one of the many things I learned from Captain Eddie. And all this is a, I don't know, looks like a 1-inch dowel, maybe 1.25-inch dowel, that I used to use when I had a different lathe. I used it on this live center, and at that time I just turned a cone shape inside this to fit over this cone, and so it just sat there like that. No threading or anything. It just sat there and served the purpose. So if you don't have one of these kind, this works just fine, or whatever you happen to have for a live center. It does need to be a live center, however. So I'm gonna put my little pin in the hole here, and then I'm just gonna thread this on. This also, all I did with this, I I didn't tap it or anything, I just screwed it on here. And then I also put CA on the thread so that it's reusable over and over. I haven't really spent any time on this thing. It's not perfect, but it serves the purpose quite well. So now we're ready. Non-slip cloth, bowl, and bring up the soft touch. Now this is a little more difficult because we don't have a center point. So I don't really know where the center is. I don't know if I'm hitting it there or not. And I'm just applying a little bit of pressure there. I'm going to align my tool rest where I need it to be. I'm just going to hold my thumb over here and see if it seems to feel the same all the way around. So let's spin it up slowly. I'm not going to make you watch this. It looks like I'm going to have to mess with this for a while. I'll bring you right back when I get this lined up. Sorry for the delay. Okay, well that didn't take that long. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. It's close enough. So I need to take this whole area here down some, and I'll just blend it into this bottom. And that will make it go away. I've got quite a bit of pressure applied from the soft touch, because there's really nothing holding it here. There's no points. And that's about 500 RPM. I'm just going to take it real easy. Okay, we have good clearance, and I think I like it. Yep, we'll just go with that. I'm going to sand it here on the lathe instead of on the workbench, because I can probably do a little bit better job. So let me grab a mask, because I'm not sanding without a mask. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to start with about 150 grit. And turn the speed down around 350. And I just want to be careful, because I don't want to mess up the nice finish I have on everything else. Yeah, that's going to work good. So I'll bring you back when we're done here in just a minute. I'm going to take it up through 400 and put a little finish on there. Remember I told you this was well centered. Well, I said it's pretty well centered, but not quite, but close enough. Well, if you look carefully, right here, I've got just a tiny little edge right there. Just the smallest thing. Over here, no edge. And that's because it's not quite centered. Also, if you look really closely right here, you'll see a little tiny bit of tear out that I couldn't see before that was inside the dovetail of the recess. So what I'm going to do to disguise that, I'm going to take my homemade point tool and just cut a groove right here where the two places meet. Probably should put my glasses on. And then I'll sand that up a little bit, and you'll never know. I'll be right back. Well, I just can't leave well enough alone. I did get it sanded real nice and clean. I thought about coloring in just this groove with some color. Black immediately came to mind, and then I thought, well, maybe green or red or who knows what. But instead I think I'm just going to take a piece of Formica sample and burn that groove in there. That rubbing you hear is my tool rest is hitting the soft touch. Won't hurt anything. I need some pretty good speed here. It's about 800. I've got my fan running, you might hear that. That's to blow away the smoke that's going to come up here. Yeah, Yeah, that looks good to me. Hope it looks good to you. Okay, back to the finish. I'll see you in a minute. Well, finally, it's done. What do you know? One soft maple rectangular bowl in the books. Now this has this is a bandsaw on the edge with a kind of a whoopsie here at this edge. Bad cut, wasn't a straight cut. Here you have a chainsaw edge. Here you have a chainsaw edge. And over here you have a perfectly natural edge. Untouched except for some light sanding and finish, of course. The bottom finished up nicely. If you look carefully right in the center there, that's the depression from my soft touch. I told you I gave it a lot of extra pressure because I was turning at whatever it was, 500 or 600 RPM. And I had so much to turn away that I wanted to be sure it was held tightly. I forgot that it was soft maple and it left that depression. And that's okay with me. I'm just going to leave it. I thought about drilling it out and set a coin in there or something. But I actually kind of like it. It'll serve as a reminder. I doubt if anybody else will get this piece. It'll probably just stay at the house here. What I like about it is you've got a perfectly round bowl. Perfectly round, surrounded by nature, man, and like that. So it serves as a bowl. It's easy to hold because you've got, you know, an upswept bottom on it. It sets nice and steady now. There's nothing real special about it, but it just it turned out pretty good, and I like what I've left in here. If you like this video, thumbs up please. I'd sure appreciate it. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly. I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. Your comments are always welcome, and I respond to all of them. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.